the Premier League didn't have the power to punish Leicester, as the club had been relegated to the Championship when their accounting period ended on the 30th of June last year. The Premier League said it was, and I quote, surprised and disappointed by the panel's decision. It's a murky area. Before we talk about it, have a listen to this. Simon Jordan, he joined Jim White, of course he did, earlier on this afternoon. He said that the Premier League has a lot to answer for after Leicester managed to escape a points deduction following an alleged breach of PSR rules.
Let's be clear, it's not an alleged breach. They breached. Unequivocally, undoubtedly, undeniably, irrefutably. What they've managed to do is find a Bermuda Triangle and find themselves in it where the governance doesn't capture them. So they are beyond governance now. So the financial fair, whoever drafted those rules was probably walking around the Premier League office now holding his head in his hands because you've allowed Leicester to get out from underneath, to be in no one's jurisdiction. They were not in the jurisdiction of the EFL when they were in the EFL. So they pulled that stroke last year by saying that we didn't have to provide our financial accounts to the EFL because we weren't in the EFL in March. They've now pulled another stroke, which is that they handed in their, when you get relegated, you hand over your league share to the upcoming team, which means they weren't in the jurisdiction of the Premier League in June 30 when their accounts are being filed. It's a farce. It's a farce.
It's a farce. It's Simon Jordan. It's interesting to hear him explain it. And when he does, you obviously realise that they have found a loophole. Mm-hmm. They're not to blame, Leicester. I know that football fans, especially Everton, Leeds and Forest fans, will be thinking that Leicester are. They're not to blame. They've found a loophole. Their lawyers have found a loophole. They've exploited that. If Everton, Leeds and Forest would have found the same loophole, believe me, they would have...
listen, they did something wrong, Leicester, but they just haven't been caught for it, basically.
Well, I mean, it hasn't been proved that within the dates that they're meant to do something wrong, it hasn't been proved that they did it in those dates. You know, after they were relegated, they went down to the Championship. Before a ball was kicked in the Championship, that's when they got the punishment. But they're suggesting that, and rightly so, they're a Championship club. What I find amazing is that the Premier League need to be held accountable for here, because they need to make it a lot easier for them to go after clubs. Yeah. Because there's a murky area. Someone was just saying they handed over the shares of the Premier League.
I didn't even know that was a thing until I heard that this morning.
Well, yeah, because obviously when it was founded in 92, all 20 Premier League clubs had an equal share of it. Yeah. And then when you go down, you hand shares over to the clubs that come up. So they handed it over on the 14th, and the 30th of June, they handed in their accounts. And it's that sort of 2-week murky period where they're not a Premier League club anymore because they've handed over their shares, and now they become a Championship side. Even though they were spending the money whilst they were a Premier League club.
So basically, they can't pin them down as to when they were a Premier League side.
Yes, there's that 2 weeks right at the end.
I mean, it's clever. It's really clever.
Yeah.
But you're right. The Premier League have got to, because if you're Everton and Nottingham Forest right now, you're seething, really, aren't you?
Yeah, of course you are.
You're absolutely seething.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, well, hold on a second here. We got punished. It nearly cost us last year relegation with the points deductions. And Leicester managed to find a way of kind of getting around that, because a lot of people probably would have had Leicester down as one of the relegation favourites this year, and that's no disrespect. I don't think their recruitment policy has been great this window. Then you add the transfer, the points deduction, which you expected to come, as I thought one was coming. You're going, but boy, maybe that's only two spots now up for grabs. The fact they've managed to avoid that all, I mean, it's fair play to Leicester for finding that loophole. But the Premier League, they look silly now.
Well, the problem is there's a loophole.
Yeah.
Why is there a loophole? There shouldn't be. That's who the other clubs you mentioned, Everton, Leeds and Forest, should be annoyed at. Why is there a loophole? Why have they managed to get away with it?
Well, I'm pretty sure the Premier League would have the best lawyers, right? And whoever come up with these
obviously
rules...
Leicester got the best.
Come up with these rules, you'd think they'd be able to find a way of, right, make sure that's watertight, that's airtight, no one could do anything. And all of a sudden, Leicester comes with that.
There's a 2-week gap where it's not airtight.
Imagine what Manchester City are going to come with.
Well, we don't know that.
With their lawyers and stuff.
With their money, yeah.
But all of a sudden, you're just opening the door a little bit for teams to go, hold on a second here.
Yeah, it's not fair. So what we're going to do, rather than just ask like a specific question, phone up now. I'd like to get the views of Leicester fans, but also football fans, Everton, Leeds and Forest. 03717223344. I mean, personally, I don't hold Leicester accountable for that. They've done what they had to do. They've got out of it. Right? There shouldn't be loopholes. It's not their fault. There is. They've used it.
And there's no chance of the Premier League coming back. And now this loophole's come out.
It's done. Yeah, it's done. They might change it so that loopholes don't exist anymore. But also, I'd like to talk about how you are going to punish a club if they are found guilty, which of course Leicester haven't been, of breaking the PSR codes, because a points deduction hurts the fans as much as because you don't want your club going down, like Everton fans last season.
You have to punish them somehow. It's going to have to be points deductions.
Well, money won't make a difference.
No, it won't dent the pockets.
No, I don't really understand.
It can only be points deductions or transfer bans.
Maybe transfer bans.
But even transfer bans are a bit of a farce because, again, the boys, and I'm not even going to try and take this point, they were saying that the transfer ban never comes with the immediate transfer window coming up.
You missed the next one.
Yeah.
You got time.
You got time to get your
in 3 transfer windows time, that will be closed. You go, I'll use the 2 then.
Yeah.
Before. So listen, we'll take calls on all the above. You can tell me how you feel the fact Leicester have effectively got away with this. Everton, Leeds and Forest fans, you can have your say on that. And also, what do you do to punish clubs that do break certain rules and guidelines?
Points and transfer bans, I think.
You're one of those fans that I asked to phone in of a team, Leeds, that did have a points deduction, right?
Yeah, the points deduction, we were probably one of the first. Correct me if I'm wrong in terms of, look, this is what happens when you mess up. The reason I was calling is because, look, at the end of the day, we went down and we deserved to go down a couple of years back, and there was, there's no way getting around that. What annoys me is that Leicester went up last season. You guys know how tight that championship race was until the end when we blew it, but they went up with probably some of the players that they've actually overspent on, if that makes sense. So, it leaves a very sour taste in my mouth, to be honest.
Do you blame... when you look at their squad from last season, we said it was loaded. That Leicester squad last season.
Yeah. Just a quick question, Kurt. I've got a Leicester fan holding on. I want to speak to him. Who do you blame here? Do you blame Leicester or do you blame the Premier League for allowing Leicester to get away with it?
I don't blame Leicester in the slightest. And, I've been listening to talkSPORT for most of the day, and I think Sam Jordan said the same thing. At the end of the day, they found a loophole and had gone through it. And, if Leeds had done the same, absolutely.
Okay.
But what annoys me is just the communication. The Premier League really need to look now and go, do you know what, we need to actually tell people how this works, why it works, and what happens if it doesn't work. I think there's too many fans, myself included, who sit there and go, what the hell is FSP? I don't understand what it is, and we have to tell Archie Gray, to make sure that we complied.
Well, listen, Carl, I hope you don't have to sell your wife's shoes. Thanks so much for coming on. Good luck with them.
Guys. You take care of yourself.
A real pleasure. You too. Sorry to rush you. I wanted to speak to Simon before we go to a break. He's a Leicester fan. Hello, Simon.
Hello there.
How are you? How are you feeling today?
Very happy. Extremely happy. I just feel that Leicester have been put in this position. Obviously, we did a fairy tale win in the league. Obviously, being a fan, you want the club to invest in players to compete in the Champions League, which they did, quarterfinals. We then went to Europa League. We missed out on the top four on both occasions. We're trying to again compete with the Big Six, the so-called Big Six, and we're trying to make a name for ourselves as a team. And as soon as we're out of Europe, we've got all this wages to pay out and all these players we've paid for, and unfortunately we just drop down. And I think the worst thing of it all is we've invested in an academy, and now we're having to sell players. And the whole point of that is to bring in talent from the local areas or talent from the UK, etc. And I just feel that it's just such a shame. And the smaller clubs, which people always associate Leicester being the small club, I think it's going to be very, very hard for us to compete and possibly win the league again.
talkSPORT Drive with Andy Goldstein, Monday to Friday afternoon from 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.